What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to give you a really quick overview of what cognitive accessibility is, because I know a lot of you had some questions when I posted my last couple videos. So I'm going to try really hard to give you guys a brief summary of what it actually is and how cognitive accessibility relates to video games. Cognition at a very basic level involves the process of thinking, and as an umbrella term, cognitive disabilities cover a huge range of conditions such as autism, ADHD, dementia, and dyslexia, but cognitive impairments can actually affect lots of other people too. Someone with a cognitive impairment might have trouble with memory, attention, communication, processing, problem solving, and reading. Video games involve using most or all of these skills, so it's really important to think about. Since cognitive accessibility covers such a huge area, it can be a little bit intimidating. There isn't really a set checklist or a series of quick fixes, so it can be quite challenging. So here are a few key areas to think about when designing for cognitive accessibility. Executive dysfunction. Executive function relates to planning, organisation, problem solving, and time management. In video games, this usually means figuring out what actions you need to take, planning those actions, and then carrying them out. Having clear mission objectives with simple instructions is a first step in making sure that players know what it is they're meant to be doing, and having them somewhere they can either see on screen at all times, or having them somewhere in the pause menu is also really helpful in helping players who might have forgotten or need clarification along the way. Maps can often be overwhelming for players, especially if you've got a big open world game with lots and lots of markers. Giving players the option to filter out some of these markers is also really useful, as it helps players focus on the task at hand and gets rid of any of that extra information that they don't need to worry about right now. Navigation assistance is also super helpful, whether that's including waypoints, objective markers, or arrows on the screen telling the player where they need to go. This ensures that players don't get lost and frustrated, potentially putting the game down altogether. Additional hint systems can also give players a bit of a push if they're struggling. This can be something as simple as leaving tips in the loading screen when a player dies, or even giving subtle clues in the environment, like the recent Tomb Raider games, which had white paint to indicate things that you could climb on. Difficulty modes can be a controversial topic, but adding easier assist modes can allow more people to play your game who wouldn't be able to otherwise. Deeper customization could be really helpful. Being able to tweak the difficulty of different mechanics like combat and puzzles means that players can customize their experience and remove any barriers they actually have to play. Giving players extra time takes some of the pressure off and allows them to enjoy things at their own pace. Similarly, practice modes where players can play around with the controls without any impending danger can also be really helpful. In addition to practice modes, a good tutorial and the ability to go back and replay it is also key. Dyslexia and reading. Many players with reading difficulties or disorders like dyslexia might find in-game text hard to read, but there are some things we can do to help these players, and it helps everybody else too. Clear, easy to read text. That means simple language and sentence structure, but also big enough to read from 6 feet away on the sofa. Adjustable font size is one of the most requested features from players with all kinds of disabilities, so this is super important to get right. This means not only the subtitles, but all of the UI too. Obsidian did a great job recently, adding completely resizable font to the Outer Worlds post-release. Sans serif fonts. That means a font that doesn't have those decorative strokes at the end of the letters. Research has shown that sans serif fonts are the most readable for people with dyslexia, and while dyslexic fonts exist, there isn't actually any evidence to suggest they perform any better than a decent sans serif font like Arial or Verdana. A solid background can make the words easier to read, so having this as an option is always really good, and you can also let players press a button to move on so that they have all the time they need to read. Oh, and try to stay away from typewriter effects. Moving letters are even more difficult to read. Sensory overload. Sensory overload can happen when one or more of your senses are overstimulated, and your brain might struggle to process all of these different signals. Anyone can experience sensory overload, but it's particularly common in people with autism, ADHD, and anxiety disorders. It's best to avoid too many flashing or rapidly repeating patterns, such as weather effects. Stardew Valley, for example, lets you adjust the snow effects as well as things like lightning, which not only helps avoid triggering seizures or migraines, but it also helps players to see what's going on in the game a little better, which can help players to process the key information. If you still want to include these features in your game, give players the ability to turn some of these features on or off. Independent volume sliders can also be really helpful for players with sensory processing difficulties, so they don't get overwhelmed by too many different sound effects, and they can adjust the volume of different things so they can hear exactly what they need to in order to play the game. Motion sickness. Motion sickness can occur when the brain receives conflicting signals. Your eyes are telling you that you're moving when you're actually just sitting on your couch. This can induce headaches, nausea, and dizziness, and it's particularly common with first-person games, especially shooters. The good news is there are plenty of options that can alleviate motion sickness for players if your game has them. Being able to switch off weapon and head bob, motion blur, and screen shake can go a really long way, as well as being able to adjust the field of view and potentially adding a crosshair or center dot. The Last of Us 2 actually had an entire menu dedicated to motion sickness, which was incredible for players that struggle with it. People with cognitive impairments can also benefit from other areas of accessibility. For example, someone with trouble processing information might benefit from using subtitles or a high contrast mode to filter out some of the distractions on screen. Designing for cognitive accessibility really benefits everyone. Maybe you're super tired or you're just distracted. Maybe there are builders making noise outside and you can't concentrate. Giving players a wealth of options to help them play their way really does help everyone. I know that we barely scratched the surface there. Most of these topics deserve a deep dive, so do let me know if there's anything you want me to make a full video on. If you're interested in learning more about cognitive accessibility, CanIPlayThat.com have a great cognitive accessibility guide, as well as reviews and articles from disabled gamers. But the best way to learn is from players themselves, so make sure to include people with cognitive disabilities in your user research, get them into playtest, and listen to what they have to say. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again soon with more of my thoughts. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below, hit that subscribe button, and have a wonderful day. Bye!